Hello, everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast synopsis. This is an audio podcast synopsis and around the series around this series Erudition of Colladax. This is an audio podcast synopsis, an audio podcast synopsis in around the Colladax rupture and in around the Colladax feature and part of this series. This is an audio podcast in around a chartered another chartered edition and an evidence-based perspective, and another ZtormLabostix production as part of excuse me as part of this audio podcast series, an audio podcast and in this and as part of this audio podcast synopsis. um, there will be a sort of an overview in around the different reflective epitomes that formed sort of the underpinnings that form sort of the underpinnings around a particular workshops that had taken place retrospectively. So in this in this regard, this audio podcast will provides looks to provide a sort of a basis in around the different sort of reflective epitomes. To begin with, in around the Mesereau model or model of transformative learning epitome that had originally been sort of found had a basis in around in around ref, in around aspects of reflective practice from reflective practice, this reflective practice sort of model from 1978. Mesereau's the Mesereau model of transformative learning describes transformative learning as learning that transform problematic frames of reference to make them more inclusive, sort of discriminating, open, and emotionally able to adapt, emotionally able to adapt or utilize. And the Mesereau model of transformative learning had been a basis in following the workshop as what in following the workshop in around funding for research, and in around the leadership skills workshops. uh, at the same time, there's in around the Gibbs cycle 1988, the reflective epitome in around the Gibbs cycle from 1988. In 1988, the American sociologist and psychologist Graham Gibbs published works in around the reflective cycle or reflective epitome, in works Learning by Doing. The Gibbs cycle encourages people to think systematically about um, uh, experiences and and sort of experiences that they've had, and during a specific during specific situations and scenarios, an event in around events in and around a particular or specific activities. This particular reflective epitome had been applicable in following the sort of time management and personal effectiveness and research the research development framework 2011 and reflective practice and the emotional EI workshops uh, and in around reflective epitomes as well. The another reflective epitome is that another reflective epitome in around this sort of in around this works in around this audio podcast synopsis is the Kolb's reflective epitome from 1984. The Kolb's reflective epitome is where Kolb published works Kolb published works in around learning styles and model learning styles and as a reflective epitome from 1984 from works which had been developed in sort of in line with learning style in line with learning style inventory and where Kolb's experimental learning theory or epitome works on two main sort of bases or levels. Um, there is a four stage cycle a 4 stage cycle of learning of learning and a full and four separate and four separate styles of learning in around the utilization of Kolb's reflective epitome. Much of Kolb's theory is concerned with the with with a learner's internal cognitive processes, and the model was this epitome or this reflective epitome had been applicable in following the professionalism workshop that had taken place retrospectively, and another in line to the Atkins and Murphy model 1993 reflected epitome. The Atkins and Murphy model the Atkins and Murphy model reflective epitome is one reflective epitome that reflective epitome that have been sort of developed by Atkins and Murphy in 1993 1994 and with the basis or the underpinning to study an individual's experience to identify points for improvement, also referred to as is the case with most of the model with most of the reflective epitomes outlined in context of reflective practice. This The Atkins and Murphy model 1993-94 have been a basis in following the EI or emotional intelligence and statistics workshops and in around the reflective epitome, Sean model from 1991. The Sean model defines or has a basis around reflective practice as the practice by which professionals become aware of implicit knowledge based and implicit knowledge base and learn from experience. The model, the Sean model from 1991 regards reflection at the time an event is happening and after the event has occurred. Both paradigms focus on reflection on reflection reflection action, and the Sean model have been implemented following the time management personal effectiveness workshops. Uh, another reflective epitome as part of the workshops. As part of the workshops, here, as part of this particular series, it was is Rolf and team's sort of framework for reflective learning from 2001. This reflective epitome has an objective where all sort of authors, investigators, or researchers, for example, in around particular problems that in around to particular problems or issues in around in around in around in around the in around in around and part of this reflective epitome. There is investigators or those in context of reflecting or reflections are make observations about issues conclude and highlight by informing what they would do to next time, what they would do to change what they would do to change or what they would change next time. And the model, this particular model, Rolf and team's model from 2001 model, the model or the reflective epitome was implemented following the the statistics workshops as part of this series, and the another reflective epitome that had been part of had been part of had been part of the sort of an underpinning, if you like, in around this in around part of the series, was the reflective epitome by Brookfield from 2005. Brookfield proposes four lenses that can be approached by investigators and teachers in a process of critical reflection. Number one, from a perspective of autobiographical. Number two, from a student's eyes and perception. Number three, from colleagues and peers experiences, and four, from the theoretical literature in around scholarship. And Brookfield's model of 2005 had been implemented in around in around sort of additionally as as part of the series as part of this audio podcast series sort of more generally, um, and finally, to highlight in around the reflective epitome, um, in around John's model for structured reflection from 2006. John's model for structured reflection as a reflective as part of a reflective epitome suggests that when learning, it helps to make sure an individual looks inwards. That researchers, investigators, and those who look to sort of reflect on works works where individuals sort of reflect inwards and thoughts with considers thoughts and feelings as part of works as part of process, and looks outwards, consider the actual incident or situations plus things like actions in a situation and they are ethical whether they are ethical, and external factors that prompt influence as well. The this this model this model was oh this sorry this reflective epitome was used in the same way in similar to the Brookfield model, the Brookfield model from 2005. And finally, to mention a little bit around the research development framework, the research development framework, or RDF 2011. The RDF 2011 is a national framework developed for investigators and researchers, which aims to help understand sort of knowledge behaviors and attitudes expected for effective and highly skilled investigators and researchers. The RDF 2011 encourages sort of excellence through achieving high levels of development, and and the RDF 2011 can be accessed through a website referred to as Vitae, as Vitae, and the 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 uh, the the reflective epitome in around in around the RDF 2011 have been the Gibbs cycle, cycle reflective epitome from 1988, 1988. The framework again, or the RDF 2011 has again has sort of four main has four main domains. Domain A, knowledge and intellectual abilities. Domain B, personal effectiveness. uh, Domain C, research governance and organization. And domain D in around influence and impact. And the domains are then split in a sort of subsplitted, wherein For example, in domain A, in domain A there's A1, A2, and A3. A1 looks at sort of knowledge base. A2 looks at, for example, cognitive abilities, and A3 looks at creativity. So the Gibbs cycle again. The Gibbs cycle was had been the reflected epitome in around the workshop in around the workshop have been implemented or utilized in around the other workshop in around the workshop of the RDF, the Research Development Framework of 2011. So that draws this audio podcast synopsis to a close to an end. The series this series has various sort of various overviews overviews and sort of in around different workshops that had taken place retrospectively, and hopefully the overviews are useful, and wherein investigators and researchers, for example, who listen in on the audio podcast on the audio podcast can get into potentially sort of utilizing the different reflective the different reflective epitomes in around works that they do. So thank you for tuning in. This has been an audio podcast synopsis in around the Erudition of Colladax. This has been part of the audio podcast synopsis aligned to the Colladax rupture, and as part of the Colladax feature. This is a chartered edition and an evidence, an audio podcast synopsis aligned to another evidence based perspective. Thanks for tuning in.